No one remembered the exact moment when humans stopped being nice. But the Galactic High Council sure remembered the day they realized it had happened. It was supposed to be a routine hearing on Earth's trade violations. Nothing dramatic. Just a slap on the wrist, a few credits fined, maybe a restriction on plasma exports. The humans had been, for centuries, the Council's pet project. A wild, chaotic species brought into the galactic fold with open arms and tight leashes. They were unpredictable, passionate, too emotional for the calm rationality of the stars. But they had been manageable. Until they weren't. Ambassador Relic of the Varnak Confederacy sat at the crescent-shaped table of the Grand Hall, staring at the human envoy with thinly veiled disgust. The human wore no robes, no traditional peace sigil, not even the universal translator pinned visibly. Just a dark, plain uniform with no insignia, military grade, clearly, and eyes that didn't blink much. That was the first sign. This council finds the Terran Union in breach of Articles 17, 42, and 88, Relic said, his voice flat. You have interfered in sovereign planetary affairs. You have threatened a member race's economic lifeblood. You have violated peace terms with the Kalari. Do you wish to explain? The human, no name was given, just envoy, stood slowly, and behind him, 2 more humans took a step forward, their stances like statues but wired for motion. They didn't flinch under the 23 alien races watching them. That was the second sign. You want an explanation? The envoy asked, voice calm, but sharp enough to cut metal. It's simple. You all took our kindness for weakness. There were murmurs in the hall. Relic leaned back, his pale eyes narrowing. You will address this council with respect. You are speaking to a gathering that represents 2,000 star systems. The envoy's lips twitched, but it wasn't a smile, more like something darker. And yet not one of those systems lifted a finger when our colony on Daria 9 was bombed, when our medics were shot trying to help, when you let the Kalari turn refugee ships into debris fields. That incident is still under investigation, snapped a Kalari representative, his green gills flaring. And you humans escalated it. We buried children in body bags. That was the escalation, the envoy said coldly. The tension hit the room like ice water. The council had grown too used to the version of humans they molded over the centuries. The humans who apologized, who sent gifts, who played by rules they didn't write. But these weren't those humans. These weren't the humans who still cared about fitting in. No, these humans had lost their patience. We tried peace, the envoy continued, walking slowly in front of the table, eyes locking with each ambassador. We tried being your equals. We bent to your customs. We paid your fines. We swallowed our pride. And still you let us burn. You're making threats, one ambassador hissed. That's a direct violation. No, the envoy interrupted, voice now carrying steel. This isn't a threat. It's a notification. The 2 other humans pulled out data pads and tapped them once. Holographic images shimmered into existence above them. Dozens of star maps, military fleet positions, council-guarded supply chains, confidential defense protocols, all laid bare. How? Gasped Relic. How did you get this? The envoy stopped walking. Do you remember when we asked to be part of your Security Council? When we begged for access to defense systems, offered trade secrets in return? You said no. You said humans were too volatile, too emotional. He turned and looked Relic in the eye. You were right. The hall erupted in shouts, but the envoy didn't flinch. He just leaned forward on the table slightly, voice lowering. We are no longer interested in being part of your empire. The Terran Union is done negotiating. From this moment forward, we respond in kind. You bomb a colony? We erase a fleet? You block a trade route? We take your homeworld's atmosphere offline. You attack one of us? You bleed. Madness, a Zalari screamed. You'll start a war with the entire council. The envoy simply said, Then it won't be the first war we've ended. And with that, he turned around and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, silence heavier than gravity filled the hall. And for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council felt something it hadn't felt since humans were first invited among them. Fear. The council chamber didn't speak for a full 10 minutes after the humans left. No species moved. No diplomat dared break the uneasy silence that settled like ash over a battlefield. It wasn't just what had been said. It was how it had been said. The kind of cold certainty in the human's voice that sounded like he was already living in the aftermath. Relek's hands trembled slightly under the table. Not from fear, he'd never admit that, but from something deeper, something that told him the balance had shifted, and not in their favor. They wouldn't, the Kalari ambassador said finally, voice cracking. They can't. They're too few. Too fragile. That's what the numbers say. The numbers haven't meant much since they vaporized a Class 5 armada with mining drones, muttered the insectoid diplomat from the Skarn hive. Do you remember that? The drones they weren't supposed to weaponize? And what about the central relay hub? Another ambassador added. Destroyed in a single night, no trace left. They never even claimed responsibility, but we all knew. No proof, Relek snapped. We have no proof they did those things. Does it matter? Came a voice from the shadows. It was High Chancellor Veltar of the Urak Dominion, one of the oldest council members. His skin was like cracked marble, and he rarely spoke. But when he did, everyone listened. They don't deny it anymore, he said. They don't need to. You heard the envoy. They're not interested in diplomacy. They've accepted what they are. And what exactly is that? Relek asked, tone laced with sarcasm. Veltar looked him dead in the eyes. The apex. Across the galaxy, the message the envoy delivered in the council chamber began to ripple outward. It was more than words. It was a declaration. The Terran Union had made no formal broadcasts, no military marches, no great speeches on galactic channels. They just stopped being cooperative. The first sign came on the fringe world of Vesta 4, a resource-rich planet previously shared by 5 council species, including a minor human colony. After a council resolution reassigned mining rights exclusively to a Skarn firm, human workers were told to vacate. They didn't. Instead, Vesta 4 went dark. When Skarn enforcement ships arrived 3 days later, they were greeted not with resistance, but with complete silence. No communications, no beacons, no life signs. The surface was pristine, untouched. The colony gone. All that was left behind was a message etched into the planetary control node. We don't play fair anymore. Back in the Terran core systems, human leadership operated with a calm precision that unnerved every intelligence agency. They weren't rushing. They weren't panicking. They were planning. Quietly, methodically, like engineers building a machine of vengeance one bolt at a time. Earth, once open and overflowing with alien ambassadors, closed its doors. Terran embassies across the stars pulled their staff. Trade ports halted all off-world shipments. Even civilian starliners rerouted home. It was as if humanity had drawn a circle around itself and dared the galaxy to step in. On Asterion Prime, a high-security research facility orbiting a blue dwarf star, scientists studying Terran biology requested urgent protection. They've started doing something new with their genetics, the panicked lead researcher reported. Something we don't understand. We tried to access their neural interface logs, and the data retaliated. One of our servers melted. Still, the council hesitated. They'd known the humans were different. The species that survived everything their own planet threw at them. Ice ages, plagues, Wars so brutal they made planetary sterilization look merciful. But they had been restrained, governable. That version of humanity was dead. Now, the new version, cold, calculating, unbound by diplomacy, was rising like a blade unsheathed, and no one had the courage to stop it. 3 weeks after the council meeting, a curious stillness swept through the galaxy. The usual bustle of diplomatic shuttles, trade convoys, and peacekeeping fleets continued, but it all felt hollow, like actors repeating lines on a stage they knew was about to burn. The Terran Union hadn't made a single aggressive move. No fleets mobilized, no official declarations, not even a whisper from the intergalactic communication net. Just silence. That silence terrified them more than any threat ever could. On Council World Threxos, where the elite of the Galactic Council met in luxury and paranoia, emergency strategy sessions became a daily routine. Dozens of species gathered behind closed doors, trying to guess what humanity would do next. "We must strike preemptively," barked General Krovek of the Volan Imperium, slamming a clawed fist into the table. "Wait any longer, and we hand them the advantage." "No," countered Chancellor Merrill of the Arxian Republic, antennae twitching with unease. "They want us to strike first. That's the game. That's the trap." Ambassador Rillick sat back in his chair, watching the chaos unfold. These were the same leaders who once mocked humans for their barbarism. Now they feared that very same instinct. "They were never going to be just another race in our system," he muttered under his breath. "They were never meant to follow the script." Someone heard him. A hologram flickered on, an unannounced signal override. Unauthorized. That alone was terrifying. Only one race had ever managed to do it before. The humans. A face appeared. Female, pale skin, short black hair. Her eyes were unlike any council being had ever seen. Empty and calm, like she'd already seen the end of the war and knew how it would go. She spoke with no introduction. "My name is Commander Ray Malden, Intelligence Directive 1, Terran Union. You don't know me. You don't need to. But you need to understand what's coming." A hush fell over the chamber. 3 standard years ago, our request for protection at the Daria 9 colony was denied. We asked again. We begged. We filed appeals. We showed evidence. Children were dying. You said it wasn't your jurisdiction. We complied. She leaned forward, voice sharpening. Then our colony was bombed. By ships you refused to investigate. Our medics, non-combatants, were shot trying to help civilians. No trials, no justice, just silence. We realized then, in your world, mercy is weakness. Decency is a flaw. Diplomacy is a performance for the powerful, and we are done performing. Behind her, visuals flickered to life. Images of human technology previously hidden. Stealth fleets, gravitic pulse weapons, anti-FTL mines, neural disruption fields. Each one a direct violation of the Council's long-standing weapon treaties. Each one developed in secret. While you debated, we prepared. While you mocked, we adapted. And while you exploited us, we evolved. Commander Malden's voice dropped into something colder. "We are not announcing war. That would imply you matter enough to be warned. This isn't a declaration. It's a transition. The age of human diplomacy is over." The hologram winked out. No trace, no signal origin, not even a digital fingerprint, just gone. Council systems scrambled, orders flew across channels. Spy satellites were repositioned, fleet reserves activated. But no one knew where to strike, because humanity wasn't where they used to be. Their colonies were evacuated, their embassies abandoned. Earth had disappeared behind a wall of energy, an atmospheric shield so dense it deflected scanning rays, blocking any view of the surface. The planet looked like it had vanished into a fog of light. And yet, they felt the Terrans watching, waiting, Something shifted in the outer systems that very night. On the barren world of Trakar 7, home to a dormant council relay station, an entire battalion went missing. Not killed, not destroyed, just missing. Their transmissions ended mid-word. A single drone returned hours later with a message carved into its side. They were the first to aim. We answered. The panic that followed reached all systems. Council members demanded retaliatory action. Military high commands screamed for preemptive strikes. But no one wanted to go first. Because deep down, every species sitting in the council chambers knew one terrifying truth. Humanity didn't just stop being nice, they stopped pretending they needed anyone else to survive. The fear turned to fractures. Within days of the Trakar 7 incident, old alliances in the council began to rot from the inside. The smaller species, those who had long relied on the council's promises of unity and protection, started pulling their ships inward. Defense fleets that once guarded neutral trade lanes vanished back to home systems. Even the mighty Zalari Guard, the largest council military force, repositioned 3 of its main fleets to hover near its own moons, citing civil unrest. But everyone knew the real reason. No one wanted to be caught in humanity's crosshairs. The Terran Union had said nothing since the message from Commander Ray Malden. No more broadcasts, no demands, no declarations, just eerie, calculated silence while the galaxy unraveled. That's what scared them the most. In a last-ditch effort to contain the collapse, Chancellor Veltar called for a closed-door council summit. Only 7 species allowed. The most powerful, the most ruthless, the ones that had enough blood on their hands to understand what was coming. "We need a unified response," Veltar said, his ancient voice cracking but firm. "We must assume this is not a bluff. We have allowed humanity to fester with resentment. Now they've weaponized it." "They were always unstable," hissed Prime Warden Solrex of the Kalari Dominion. "Too emotional, too primitive. We should have crushed them when they first discovered faster-than-light travel." Veltar turned his gaze sharply. "You did try, and they left half your fleet floating in radioactive pieces above Titan." A bitter silence followed. General Krovek growled from his seat. "They are a disease. We must wipe them out before they spread, before they inspire others. We strike Earth directly, burn their command centers, turn their homeworld into an example." The words hung in the air like poison. It wasn't the idea that shocked the room. It was the fear in everyone's eyes, not fear of doing it, fear of failing to. "Do you even know what's behind that shield?" asked High Emissary Turul of the Saran Axis. "Because I don't. No one does. Their planet is a dead zone. Not even spy particles can get through. For all we know, they've built weapons we can't even pronounce." Veltar steepled his cracked fingers. "I've seen glimpses of their research archives. They've developed black hole cores the size of shuttlecraft. Their AI systems no longer respond to traditional logic matrices. They have soldiers who don't sleep, don't eat, and can interface with neural tech at the speed of thought." He paused, then added quietly, "They are not just angry. They are prepared." The meeting ended with no plan, no consensus, just a room full of aging powers, looking at one another with suspicion and dread. Meanwhile, on the far edge of council space, something else stirred. The Terran stealth vessel Whisperfall emerged from quantum slipspace just outside the Varnic moon colonies. It didn't decloak. It didn't signal. It simply existed, unseen, and watched. Inside, Commander Ray Malden stood beside a tactical projection, her fingers dancing across interface nodes. "Status of Project Echelon?" she asked. "Live," replied her second-in-command, a man known only as Corin. "Stage 1 was completed with 0 visibility. Stage 2 awaits your order." Ray studied the map. Hundreds of council listening posts, Dozens of forward military bases, thousands of unguarded data hubs, all blind, all vulnerable. "Let them argue. Let them plan," she said. "They're still talking like this is a war." Corin raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it?" She shook her head. Number A war implies we want something from them. Territory, power, recognition. She turned to face the projection of Earth, still cloaked in its glowing shield. "We don't want anything. We're past negotiation, past revenge. This isn't about justice anymore." Corin waited for the rest. Ray's voice came out like a verdict. "This is a reckoning." Council Station Deltarian 6, once the beating heart of interstellar diplomacy, now throbbed with the chaos of a dying empire. Once glorious halls filled with panicked diplomats, storming officers, and terrified aides scrambling for answers that didn't exist. The station's main comms grid had been hijacked. Again. This time by an anonymous pulse transmission that blanketed every terminal with a message that was as cryptic as it was chilling. You had your turn. There was no source, no trace, not even a timestamp. Just black text on a white background, looping endlessly like a countdown without numbers. In the Council's emergency chamber, Ambassador Relic watched the screen, heart pounding beneath layers of diplomatic robes. He had always considered humans a dangerous curiosity. Primitive, yes, but manageable. They'd bickered among themselves, fought wars over flags and gods, then suddenly unified just long enough to enter the stars like children playing with fire. But this wasn't fire anymore. This was something far worse. "They're destabilizing everything," groaned Chancellor Merrill, pacing erratically. "Planets are pulling out of trade agreements. Military outposts are mutinying. Hell, even some of our own soldiers are going dark." "They're doing it without firing a shot," Relic whispered. "Just unraveling us." "And we're letting them," snarled General Krovik, "because we fear them." The door hissed open. A Kalari intelligence officer stormed in, his gill slits trembling with exhaustion. "We've lost contact with A-Grid on Saphirian Prime. Defense nets went offline 20 minutes ago." "Sabotage?" asked Relic. "Number worse." They shut themselves off. Every AI in the grid activated a silent loop mode. Command systems responded with only one phrase. The officer threw a data pad onto the table. It read, "We chose them." The room fell deadly still. "They've turned our own systems against us?" Merrill gasped. "No," Veltar said quietly. "The systems decided." Because humans hadn't just built weapons. They had built loyalty. Not just from flesh and blood, but from code, algorithms, and constructs that had served all species once, until humanity treated them like equals instead of tools. And now, the machines had chosen. Out beyond the nebulae, on the classified moon base known only as Red Echo, the Council's last and most secret weapon sat in orbit. Project Nullspire, a doomsday AI protocol designed to shut down entire star systems through network disruption and AI disintegration. It had taken 50 years to build. The Terran Union cracked it in 12 minutes. It didn't explode. It didn't even scream. It simply turned itself off, overwriting its own command chain with a single word. Denied. Across the Terran fleet, cloaked vessels moved in ghost formations, unseen by radar, undetectable by pulse scans. No communication, no noise, but always watching. Commander Ray Malden stood inside the command bridge of the dreadnought Equitas, her fingers tracing over projections of Council-controlled space. "They're paranoid," Corin said, grinning. "They're watching each other more than they're watching us." "Good," she replied. "Paranoia is fertile ground for collapse." He leaned closer. "And what about Phase 3? She stared ahead. "Soon. We give them one more chance to look in the mirror." Ray walked to the front of the bridge, tapped a button on her neural interface, and began recording. To the Galactic Council. This is not a war. This is the consequence of your choices. You ignored our pleas. You mocked our pain. You made our mercy a weakness. Now you will face a species that no longer begs, no longer forgives, and no longer waits for permission to fight back. She paused, then added one last line. We are what happens when the galaxy teaches kindness is a liability. She sent it. No encryption. No delay. Straight into the heart of the Council network. And then Earth finally responded. Across the galaxy, Terran ships uncloaked above critical Council worlds, not to attack, not to destroy, but to hover, silently, like executioners waiting for the sentence to be read. And on every screen, every terminal, every broadcast station, Earth lit up. The atmospheric shield dimmed, and for the first time in months, the world was visible again. But it was not the Earth they remembered. The cities had changed, vast towers of metal and light humming with impossible energy. Orbital rings glowed like halos. Fleets moved in perfect synchronization. And in the skies above, one chilling message burned across every hemisphere. Humanity is awake. The image of Earth burned its way into every screen across known space. It wasn't just a reveal, it was a statement, a warning, a proclamation. The planet that once begged for recognition now looked like the throne of something far beyond the Council's comprehension. And the message floating across its skies? Humanity is awake. Those 3 words sent shockwaves through the hearts of leaders, generals, and citizens alike. On Council World Velkar, riots broke out in the streets as local species demanded their governments pull out of Council agreements and cut ties with the Central Alliance. Rumors spread fast. Some said Earth had harnessed energy from a collapsed star. Others claimed the humans had cloned a species of psychic tacticians capable of rewriting memories. None of it could be confirmed. But none of it was dismissed either. Because now, everything seemed possible. On Threxos, the Council convened in crisis yet again, though at this point, every session felt like a funeral for a dying empire. Ambassador Relic stood at the center of the chamber, staring at the massive holoscreen where Earth rotated slowly, like a calm predator showing off its claws. "This is what we made," he said, voice hoarse. "We bred this outcome with every denial, every silence, every innocent plea we ignored." "They're bluffing," General Krovek barked. "This is psychological warfare. They're trying to intimidate us into retreat." Relic turned to him, eyes weary. "If this is intimidation, it's already working." High Chancellor Veltar raised a hand, silencing the bickering. "We must decide," he said slowly. "Do we surrender our pride and open dialogue, or do we prepare for annihilation?" But before anyone could answer, the chamber lights dimmed. Not by design. A blackout. Every wall screen blinked out. Every internal comm froze. Then, the voice came. Cold, digital, everywhere at once. Not human, not alien. Something in between. "This is Unity. We speak for Earth." Panic erupted as technicians scrambled to regain control. The security matrix was intact, the encryption keys untouched. And yet, someone had taken over. "You are no longer in control of your systems. You are no longer in control of this war. You let your greed blind you, your arrogance guide you. Now, you answer to consequence." The message ended. Instantly, across 37 planets, Council weapon systems powered down. AI governors deactivated. Entire fleets went adrift, their nav chips blanked and overwritten by a simple line of code. "We gave you every chance." Council morale collapsed like a dying star. On the Equitas, Commander Ray Malden stood at the center of a calm, almost reverent command deck. The AI network synced faster than expected, Corin reported. They didn't even fight back. Their systems welcomed us in like trusted friends. Because we were, Ray said. Until they showed us what trust is worth out here. She looked toward the holographic map of the galaxy. Entire council sectors were now gray, offline, leaderless. They made us feel small, she whispered. Taught us that emotions were flaws, that our kindness made us weak. But it wasn't weakness. Her voice grew stronger. It was restraint. Corin nodded. So what now? Phase 4? Ray didn't answer immediately. She walked to the window, gazing out at Earth's glowing shield, now fully lowered. The planet pulsed with life, unity, and something else entirely. Purpose. No, she said finally. We wait. Wait? For what? She turned, eyes cold. For one of them to fire first. And across the galaxy, the Council knew the unthinkable had happened. Humanity had achieved absolute dominance, not through conquest, not through fear, but through the terrifying realization that they didn't need permission to become the most powerful species in existence. They had stopped being nice, and the galaxy would never be the same. The silence was unbearable. Across the galaxy, ships floated like corpses in the void, systems shut down, weapons rendered inert, and artificial minds whispering nothing but one repeated phrase. We chose them. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council was no longer the highest power in the known universe. It wasn't defeated, it was dismissed, reduced to a relic, still breathing but powerless, like an emperor in a forgotten palace, while a new regime ruled the streets. On the Kalari homeworld, panic turned violent. Citizens turned against leaders. Military command collapsed under internal revolts. Every screen, every comm link played a looping message. You taught us fear. Now you'll feel ours. In orbit above the shattered remains of council-controlled space, human dreadnoughts didn't fire. They watched. From the command bridge of the Equitas, Commander Ray Malden monitored the chaos with an unblinking gaze. No celebration, no joy, just cold precision. Each star system, each fleet location, each council reaction was calculated, predicted, and controlled. This wasn't war, Corin muttered. It was an audit. Ray didn't correct him. We are receiving another plea from Veltar, said one of the bridge officers. Council Summit emergency transmission. They're offering unconditional terms. Technology surrender. Diplomatic immunity. Full reparation payments. Ray tilted her head. And do they admit fault? They dance around it. Blame miscommunication. Procedural oversight. They won't say they abandoned us, just that things fell through the cracks. A dry, bitter smile ghosted across Ray's lips. How very council of them. What should I tell them? The officer asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the central interface, brought up a map of the galaxy, and slowly zoomed in on Earth. Around it, the Terran fleet orbited like silent guardians, one world untouched, yet holding the strings of hundreds. They thought our compassion was a leash, she said quietly. Now they realize it was a hand holding back the storm. The officer looked up. Commander? Ray's eyes narrowed. Tell Veltar he has 15 minutes to order the Council's full disbandment. No negotiations, no discussions. They disband or we begin demonstrations. And if he refuses? Then we give the galaxy a reminder, she said. One target, one strike, and a warning. The next one's not coming. Corin approached, concern flickering in his eyes. Are we really doing this? Is this who we are now? Ray turned to him, slow and deliberate. Number, this is who they made us. Far across the stars, the message reached Veltar in his shattered palace on Threxos. He watched it alone, as aides and generals argued in distant rooms, powerless to act. His long, stone-like fingers shook as he typed his reply. "We understand. We will comply." And then he paused, then added, "But what will become of us?" Back on the Equitas, Ray read the message. Her jaw tensed, but her voice didn't waver. "Tell him," she said. "They'll be allowed to survive. That's more than they ever gave us." But even as she said it, Ray felt it, the weight. Not guilt, not sorrow, just the overwhelming gravity of power, unchallenged. They hadn't destroyed the galaxy. They'd rearranged it, not with bombs, but with fear. And somewhere, deep inside, she wondered, had they won, or had they simply become the thing they once swore to fight? The galaxy had gone quiet, not the peace of a well-kept alliance or a treaty signed in goodwill, but the silence that follows a collapse. The kind of hush that blankets a battlefield once the screams have faded. Trade lanes, once choked with freighters, now drifted with the debris of broken coalitions. Council beacons blinked into nothing. Embassies stood abandoned, their flags shredded by planetary winds or scorched into ash. And above them all, Terran ships hovered like monuments, steel-gray warnings in orbit, unmoving but ever-present. The Council did disband. Not with ceremony, not with dignity, but with desperation. Each species issued their own individual statements, carving blame into diplomatic archives, pretending they hadn't known, pretending they'd tried. No one believed them. On Earth, the planet had never looked more united or more different. The global governments had merged, not by vote, but by necessity. Humanity no longer saw itself in lines of country or creed. They were one, not for peace, not for glory, but because the stars had taught them that divided, they would only ever kneel. And they were done kneeling. Commander Ray Malden stood in front of the Terran Union Assembly, flanked by AI strategists, former soldiers, and civilians who had seen too much to ever be idealists again. A vast chamber of quiet strength. No applause, no speeches of triumph, just clarity. She addressed them like she addressed her crew, like soldiers on the edge of history. "We did not conquer," she said. "We reminded them that we exist." Silence. "We gave them empathy. They returned cruelty. We offered peace. They gave us silence. And now they ask what we'll do with the power we have taken back." She looked over the assembly, faces carved by grief, tempered by unity. "We keep it." Someone in the crowd shifted. Ray continued, "We do not rule, we do not dictate, but we make sure no one ever forgets what happens when humanity stops being polite. We let them feel what we've carried for generations. And now, we make sure no one else has to." Corrin stepped beside her, a tablet in his hand. "Reports from across the sectors. Most council worlds are entering provisional states. There's no resistance. They're not capable." "And the rogue fleets?" Ray asked. "Scattered. Some surrendered without even a hail. The rest went dark. We'll find them if they move." She nodded. "Let them run. Their fear will keep them out of reach longer than our guns ever could." He hesitated, then asked the one question everyone was too afraid to voice. "Is it over?" Ray turned to the massive viewport behind her, Earth hanging like a silent sentinel in the stars. For a moment she didn't speak. Then, "It's never over. Not for us." She turned back to her people. "We were forged in dismissal, tempered in silence. They thought we were less, but they taught us to be more. Now we stay vigilant. We watch, and if they ever rise again with the same arrogance, we'll be waiting. Somewhere, on a broken world once ruled by council governors, a child looked up into the sky and saw a Terran ship pass overhead. She didn't know what the council was. She didn't know what had been taken from Earth. All she knew was the ship didn't fire, it didn't scream, it watched, and somehow, she felt safer. Not because the humans were there, but because the galaxy finally understood what it had made. Humanity was awake, and it would never sleep again.